I believe quitting is super tempting because a lot of times it's the easy way out. It's the path of least resistance. And but anything that's worth achieving is usually not the easiest path. So I know that there are several reasons why people quit. There are two of them that I want to highlight. Like in my current role in academia, I help mentor students who are trying to obtain their bachelor's degrees, and I recount one story very recently where this one student was facing. She had about 4 days or so before the end of the term, and she needed to pass these courses by that time. So some backstory in terms of, we could blame a lack of momentum, a lack of discipline. We could blame all of those things, but where she was at that point in time was she needed to pass these courses and she only had a few days. And, so she took the one course and she didn't pass it. It's a proctored assessment. But that one course was allegedly the easier of the two courses she had to do. And so she was really having a hard time trying to get her mind in the right space about what was going to happen with the second course, which was supposedly the harder of the two. And my take on it was, and then there were some other issues. Sorry, I just did a dog leg, but I'll come back. The other issue that led to pressure for her was she needed to pass at least one more course or she would have been withdrawn from the university. And so that was added pressure. My take on it was it's not over until it's over, right? That's the attitude to have. We don't know what's going to happen. Just go in with the right mindset, take the assessment, and then let's regroup and reassess, right? So she went in, and needless to say, or maybe needful to say, she passed it. And of course, she was, beside herself. I wasn't too surprised, really, because, I mean, there's no, it doesn't matter what the consensus was. It doesn't matter what the popular opinion about this course was in relationship to the previous one. And so to me, those weren't enough evidentiary things to make a judgment call on. And this proved to be true. So the one thing that I would say when it comes to quitting is one is internal, and I think the next example I'll give probably has more to do with external environments. This one, I believe, was mostly internal because it was her mindset, and she needed to get in the right frame of mind as she approached this course. She passed it. Lesson learned is sometimes it's all about what's internal. You need to calibrate and reframe the way you look at a so-called obstacle. Second example has to do with what I think are influences by the external environment, by the power dynamic, the dynamics in play that you may not have leverage and influence over. And what do you do when it's easier or seemingly easier to quit and deviate from that path that you want to walk on when the power structures, the hierarchy, and everything else seem to be working against the decision that you feel like you should be able to make? So this was a lot of years ago, and I use myself as the example. which I don't really like to do. I don't really feel comfortable talking about myself. But this is a good example of what I'm referring to. And this was way back in the 90s. Yeah, I'm aging myself. And I had two leaders in the Army. This is when I was on active duty. I had two leaders within a 4-year span encourage me to pursue the officer route in the Army. And I'll spare you the details of some of that. But needless to say, I did pursue the route, and I did fill out the application. Here is where the complicated part came up. I was on orders to the Republic of South Korea, and I had no interest in going to Korea instead of pursuing this career path. And so it came down to the weekend when I was supposed to have long cleared the installation and making necessary movement toward getting on a plane to go to South Korea for my assignment. Here is the deal. Back then in the regulation, to go from an enlisted soldier to an officer, it was the green to gold program. If you were in orders, you had to obey those orders to PCS, a permanent change of station, PCS. That's what my orders were for. However, except for this one single carve out, it was for the green to gold program. It was clearly written in the regulation that if you're selected for the green to gold program, you can pursue that path. You could decline the orders to PCS somewhere else. That's the regulation. I didn't write it, but I read it, and I knew I was right. But no one in the personnel department, in my immediate chain of command, no one was supporting that, because for whatever reason, it was irrelevant to me why they weren't supporting it. I just knew that I was right. And I had the support of, I shouldn't say no one in my immediate chain of command. That wasn't correct, because it was my platoon leader who had encouraged me to pursue that path. So he was supportive. And it was my platoon sergeant years ago that at first encouraged me to pursue that path. So, but everyone else, my company commander, first sergeant, the people in the personnel office who actually had the power to do the paperwork, they weren't supportive of it, no matter what I show them in the regulation. So on that Friday, so I was 72 hours before I was supposed to be on a plane, I knocked on my battalion commander's door, used the open door policy, and I explained my situation to him. And he called down to the personnel section. I know this sounds like a made up story, but he called down and he explained to them that I was covered under this regulation. I was accepted to go to the green to gold program, and they needed to cancel my orders. And the orders were canceled. So I tell that story as another example of not quitting, because it's really easy to quit. The thing that helped me, I believe, apart from having the strength of the regulation as the premise for what I was doing, was the fact that I had, for a couple of years before that, maybe more recently than that, I had represented my company, the battalion, the brigade, all the way up to the installation, what we used to call like boards, like a competition board. If you're a civilian, it's basically you demonstrate your military skills in front of a panel of senior enlisted soldiers, and then you're selected as the one that won that competition. So I represented my unit all the way up to the installation level. And so I was at least known, like my photograph was in a hallway in brigade and in battalion as the enlisted soldier that did that. So he knew who I was. So a part of this is preparation, right? Doing things beforehand, doing the right things, and also, I guess, doing things right. I did the right things in that I represented my unit and I was known, or they were at least acquainted with me, familiar in some to some degree. Doing so that was doing the right thing. Doing things right was I had the backing of the regulation, and I had crossed my T's and dotted my I's. So I did the stuff, and so I was prepared to defend my position at that point. And so I talk some more about this type of thing when I give talks about basically how to navigate in an environment where there's power dynamics at play, which that's what was going on here, and how to really use strategic courage, because you have to have the courage to take the next step, to secure the outcome you want. So how do you navigate power dynamics to secure the outcomes you want, and doing all of that while preserving your own credibility? So don't get belligerent, don't bark up the wrong tree, and not burning bridges, right? You want to, you really have to exercise a whole lot of things, a whole lot of, I guess, using personality, using tone, using timing. All of those factors have to come into play in order to navigate and have the outcomes you want successfully. So anyway, so what I want to say today is, hey, don't quit. Sometimes it takes you internally reframing the issue, looking at it differently, and also when it's maybe outside influences that are at play, well, then how do you navigate that? All right, so I want to encourage you, don't quit, and be encouraged.